Hello there, true crimerers. It's time for another true crime in a short amount of time, and it's another Coldest Cases by Canadian province. And I'll stop insulting you by doing this horrible accent. Accents are not my strong suit. Today, because I'm going alphabetically in this series, we're now going to Nova Scotia. And this is the case of Newton Harold Boutilier. Viewer discretion is advised. Of course, before we get started, please make sure if you like true crime and you're just now stumbling into this page, give me the good old subscribe, like the video, all the blah blah blahs you're supposed to say. And yeah, such a great salesperson. So for today's story, we are specifically going to French Village in Nova Scotia. It appears to be a little west of Halifax. This is the oldest cold case that I could find, but there are plenty more cold cases that I've added to my list that I will, cover eventually from there. On the morning of January 7th, 1968, police were called to a little store that was also a home to the store owner. Police arrived around 10:45 a.m., and they were called there by the owner of the house's sister, who lived a few houses away. Earlier that morning, a couple of potential shoppers tried to go to the store that was owned by 81-year-old Newton Harold Boutilier. He always promptly opened the store at 8 a.m. The open sign was always flipped over right at 8 a.m. So when these two shoppers got there, sometime around 9:30, and the door was locked and the sign wasn't flipped over, they were a little concerned because Newton had been doing this for about 30 years. It was like clockwork for him, so they knew something was up. They also knew that his sister lived just down the road, so they went to her house. She walked in with the two individuals who tried to go shopping, and she found her 81-year-old brother lying on the ground. He was unconscious, and then when they checked his pulse, unfortunately, he was dead. There was some blood around him, but it did not look like a struggle had taken place. And at first glance to his sister, it didn't look like certainly not like a murder had taken place. But when police arrived, they obviously, brought him to the coroner. And about a day or so after this took place, they would rule that he, in fact, had been stabbed numerous times. They never officially released the cause of death, but there was, a leak that the coroner did state that he was stabbed to death, but it was ruled, at any rate, a homicide. The only thing that was out of sorts in the house, other than obviously Newton being deceased, his wood stove had been flipped over on its end. But nothing appeared to have been stolen. He could have had money on his person that was taken, but they just didn't know if that was the case. The TV in the house was still on, and it was on a channel where Newton would have been watching because he was a diehard hockey fan, and there was a hockey game on the night before he was found. So they believe, because he would always turn his TV off, so they believe that someone may have entered his home, possibly through the storefront, because, like I said, the store was also where he lived, and interrupted him as he was watching the game, and possibly that's when the attack took place and a potential robbery happened. Unfortunately, by the way, I really don't have any photos for this case. It's pretty old, and there just really wasn't anything I could find. At first, they were completely clueless about this, but when they did a little bit more digging, they had found that in the recent months leading up to this, there had been two other stabbings that took place. On November 18th, 1967, in, the lower Sackville area of this area, Nova Scotia, 51-year-old Robert Arthur Ward was found stabbed to death in a ditch just outside of Halifax. He also was someone who lived alone, and he also operated his own store. And he had multiple stab wounds to his body. And at the time of the discovery, there was no suspects. Then on December 29th, 1967, a woman was found stabbed to death. Cora Bartow, who I guess was a teacher, 51 years old, in nearby Nicto Falls, she was discovered deceased in her home, stabbed to death. Now, the interesting thing is that Mr. Ward and Miss Bartow, they actually knew each other. They were acquainted with one another, but the two of them did not know Newton. Their deaths would precede his death. Now, in terms of the murder of Mr. Ward, that one was eventually solved. There were two teenagers who were eventually arrested. They were like, thieves who had attacked him, but they were never able to pin the murders of Cora and eventually Newton on these same two teenagers. That being said, there are an extreme amount of similarities. All three of these people, they lived alone. Two of them were store owners. All three of them were not wealthy, but they had money so that if someone were to try to rob them, they would have something to give. And all three of them were very beloved people in the community. Newton Boutilier was described as a man who, like at a shop, if someone came in and they wanted like a chocolate bar or a piece of candy that he sold, and they didn't have at the time the nickel or the dime to pay for it, he would give it to them for free because he was just a generous man. Newton never married. He didn't have any children, so at the time he was single. So there were no possible affairs going on, anything like that. He didn't have any shady business dealings. His store was a popular store in the community, and he just lived a very honest life. So whoever did this to him, and quite frankly, all three of these people, even though one of them was solved, they were all just super random. They were all randomly chosen people, is what it appeared to be. Cora Bartow's murder, who unfortunately I don't have a photo of again, is still unsolved, and there's really not much information about her case. And then Newton Boutilier's case is still also unsolved. They have really no leads. I want to say they had to have investigated those two teenagers because the murder they eventually got convicted of committing was in the same area as the other two, in the same time frame, the same MO, same everything. So I want to say they investigated them and possibly ruled them out, but I can't say for sure. There really isn't a lot of information on this. Just because something seems a certain way doesn't mean it always is that certain way. They may have had plenty of evidence to convict those two teens of that one murder, but no evidence whatsoever for the other two. Currently, from what I can see, Nova Scotia police are offering a $150,000 reward for any information that would lead to an arrest for the murder of Newton Boutilier. If you by chance have any information on his murder or the murder of Cora Bartow, you can contact the cold case unit investigating these cases at 902-490-5333. Or you can reach out to Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS or 8477. Like I always say, in all of these cold cases, the smallest detail could be the most monumental thing to police. I know this case happened a very long time ago. It's been over 50 years. So whoever killed Newton and possibly also Cora, they're both at least in their 60s or 70s. Hopefully still alive so that they could be arrested and charged and go through the process of being locked up, but you never know. But at any rate, if you have any information, please contact those numbers. You can do this always anonymously if you don't want anyone to find out it was you. That is perfectly okay to do. But the families involved, to whoever is still around, they deserve the answers, and they deserve justice for their loved ones. But that is all I have for this particular case. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that one day, somehow, some way, this gets solved. As usual, like I said towards the beginning, please make sure you subscribe. I have tons of videos for you to watch here on YouTube. Videos that I've made specifically for YouTube, and also compilations from my TikTok channel or page. If you have any cases to recommend, please email me. The information to do that is below. Check my case list in my link tree first before you recommend a case. And if you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell t-shirts and hoodies and a wine glass and other stuff like that. We do ship internationally. Adam makes my merch, my friend, all himself. And he's amazing, so he will ship it to you wherever in the world you are. I do have a Discord server. If you want to join it, you're more than welcome to. Please be over the age of 18. It's a very quiet Discord, not a super crazy place sometimes. But yeah, feel free to join it if you like. Lastly, make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of my link tree below, blah, 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 all that stuff. Oh, that was aggressive. I'm so sorry. But that is it for today's video. True crime, a rooney dooney ding dongs. And like I close every video, who wants to eat me watch this? Wait, Matt, I'm drunk. Who wants to watch me eat this thing of whiteout? Anyone? Anyone? Am I gonna die?